my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt-Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place for women to come together to share their childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from women all over the world. This episode is sponsored by Solly Baby, the makers of Solly Baby wrap carriers, Solly Swaddles, and Solly Dolly wraps. At Solly Baby, closeness is what matters, the power of touch, the strength in being together, and that the most enduring relationships are not only in love but in experiencing life together. Solly Baby is generously offering $5 off your order with the code BIRTHHOUR at sollybaby.com. Today's episode is with Natalie Diaz, who is the founder of Twiniversity, and she's going to be sharing her twins' birth story today. Hi, Natalie. Welcome to the Birth Hour. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Bryn. I'm equally as excited. So I'm honored. I'm more honored than excited. So thanks for having me as a part of this today.
Well, can you start off by telling listeners just a little bit about you and your family?
Sure. So I am Natalie Diaz. I am the founder of Twiniversity and the author of What to Do When You're Having Two. I am a native New Yorker. I always feel like that's my big claim to fame because not many people could say that. And I have 12-year-old twins that are driving me to drink. So that's always fun. I really wish that I would have known that the tween years were going to be equally as difficult but different than the infancy stage. So I'm in the heat of that. But I never expected to have twins. I really was just aiming for the one baby. And we had a very long series of infertility, which then brought us to having double embryos, and the two embryos now live in my house. So yeah, it was a very interesting turn of events, and where people say like, that event changed my life. When the doctor found that second heartbeat, that was something that literally changed the entire course of my life, and not just personally, but obviously now professionally.
Right. Well, I am so excited to hear their story, your story. So let's start with that moment. Do you want to share about the infertility journey? Or
Sure.
Okay, let's start with that then.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny because I don't love to talk about my infertility because I feel like it's such a personal thing that when people outwardly ask, I get like somewhat defensive. I don't know why. It's funny. But I'm like, why do you assume that they're IVF? Even though clearly they are IVF twins.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that because you probably get all of the same questions about twins all the time.
Oh, geez, Louise. You can't even imagine. But that was always a big one. So when people would ask me when they were infants, my immediate response would be, why are you having fertility problems? Like I would just throw it right back because I'd be like, why are you all in my business?
I love it.
I'm getting right back in your business. That's it. Same thing about breastfeeding. Did you breastfeed? How were your crack nipples? Did you have mastitis? Tell me more. Oh my God. So, but it's funny that now I live my life telling these stories. So I got married. I think I was 22. I can't even remember anymore. I got married like when I was a baby. And I married my high school sweetheart, who I'm still ridiculously happily married to. And we started immediately trying to have kids. So at 22, 23, and nothing was happening. And we couldn't figure out why clearly. And so I would go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, this could take time, and it's timing, and, go on vacation, and you're too stressed, and have a drink and relax. And we did that for years. And at the time, our insurance company told us that in order to even qualify for IVF, we had to have 5 years of documented infertility. So almost every single month, I would have to call the doctor and document this and say, nope, I got my period. Nope, I got my period. Honestly, it's probably one of the most traumatizing things that I've gone through, because to go through for 5 years, it wasn't even that we were failing. It's like I had to tell everybody I was failing. Mm-hmm. So we were failing and failing and failing. And then finally the 5-year clock was up, and we started the process of finding out why. And, they did extensive testing on my husband, extensive testing on us. And there was like a million reasons. why we weren't getting pregnant. Now, truthfully, all those reasons existed when I was 22, but yet nobody wanted to kind of look into this. It was very frustrating. So, whatever, there's nothing you could do, right? You can't cry over spilt milk. So we just kept moving forward, and we did a lot of IUIs, which were a total waste of time. And then eventually we kind of went for the big guy of the IVF, and we did the whole process. And of course, that's, traumatizing in itself, and it's so scary. And it's scary not only because it's like medically scary that you're in the doctor so much and you're getting blood tests and you're getting poked and you're getting prodded, and I mean that's of course a very interesting time. But when we did the transfer, we were very fortunate that we were able to have 12 eggs. So they got these 12 eggs from my tiny little ovaries, and they went to go, cook for the 3 days or whatever. But after the 3 days, we only had 2 that made it to transfer day.
Wow.
So all the other embryos weren't viable, which is, I don't know if that's normal or not, but we had expected to, throw some in the freezer and come back and revisit this at some other time. But we only had 2 that made it to transfer, and that was, very upsetting, because you go through that whole process and you're like, oh, this is all that I have left. So we did the transfer, and, very quickly they realized that both of the little guys took, which was crazy because, I remember them calling me to tell me that I was pregnant. And, when you go through so many years of genuine trauma of finding no or seeing that you got your period, it was just absolute, I didn't believe it. And it's funny because the doctor didn't call me to tell me that I was pregnant. It was actually one of the secretaries in the office that I befriended. And she knew that it was going to be that day that, we found out if there was going to be a positive pregnancy test or what was going on. And I went to the movies, and I wanted to really distract myself that day. So my sister took off work. I took off work. And actually, at the time, I didn't take off work. I wasn't working. I was really doing nothing but trying to be, an incubator for these little embryos. I basically stopped my entire world so that I could do this. So I went to the movies. We went to go see Mean Girls. Do you remember that movie with Lindsay Lohan? Yeah, classic cinema that really has lived on well. That Oscar-winning movie, Mean Girls. I was in there, and she called me, and I saw that it was the doctor's office, and I answered the phone, and I'm like, hello, because you're whispering because it's the middle of the movie. I'm like, hello, and she's like, Nat, I have news. You're pregnant. And I stood up in the movie theater and I screamed. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And there was me and 18 senior citizens, because who's at the movies in the middle of the day? So I stood up and I ran out of the theater. My sister just ran after me. And in the lobby of the movie theater, I remember calling my husband and telling him that I was pregnant. And he was like, that's great. I don't think he even knew what to say. And so we went into it you want to be excited, but you don't want to get too excited.
Right.
Because you don't know what's going to happen. And even though I'm pregnant today, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be pregnant tomorrow. So it's scary. That yes was exciting, but it was so scary. So I left. By the time we got outside, I realized I left my purse. I left everything in the movie theater. I just ran out like there was a fire. I was so excited. And so we had to go in, and I had to collect my thoughts. And, my whole family knew that I was going through this process. It wasn't a secret. And so we came home and we told everybody that we got this positive test. And we went out. And where I didn't want to celebrate, my mother said, it doesn't matter what's going to happen today. Today is a celebration. Don't think it doesn't matter what's going to happen tomorrow. Don't even think about tomorrow. We're going to stay positive, and we're going to move forward as if everything's going to be perfect. So my mom's not one that believes in worrying, even though she does. It's hilarious. But I guess for me as her child, she was like, this is nothing we're going to think about. Today we're going to go out to dinner. We're going to celebrate. And it really was it was something that I'll always remember. And I have the worst memory in the universe. But when it comes to things like that, and even like my birth story, they're just really burned into my memory forever. So that was our IVF journey. It was, I don't know if it was interesting or if it was difficult, but for everybody that I know that's going through IVF, or anybody that's listening that's going through the process or maybe came through the other side, it's something that like we know about. I feel like, not comparing it to like military service, because that would be, speaking less of military service, but it's almost like this little secret society of people that have gone through IVF. And I'm rooting for you. Just know that. And in my prayers every night, it's not only for, my twin families, but anybody going through the process, because I feel your pain. And I'm sorry that you have to do that. But sometimes you get lucky like I did. And those only 2 little embryos that took, they're, living right in the bedroom next to where I'm sitting right now. So, yeah. So that's how that went. So that was quite interesting, I have to say.
I definitely feel like there's this, like, I don't know if there's a hashtag like IVF warriors or something. There's definitely a community out there that's
Definitely.
so strong that I love that, that probably didn't exist when you were going through that.
Oh, it did, actually. So there was Yahoo groups back in the day. Once upon a time in 1904, we had Yahoo groups. And I was in this Yahoo group that was for IVF families. And I made a friend online that lived on the West Coast. And she and I we were cycling together, right? So they call it a cycle. So we were cycling together. Our shots were done almost on the same day. She was maybe a day or 2 ahead of me. So if she's like, oh, we did that progesterone shot, we found that if we used, a warm heating pad before, it was much better. So she was giving me little tips a few days ahead of me. And then we graduated from the IVF group together to the pregnant group together, because then we both got our pregnancy results on the same time. And then we graduated to the expecting twins together. So she was also expecting twins. And even all these years later, I'm still talk to her. I still talk to her fairly regularly. God bless social media, man. I get to watch her kids grow up, even though she's on the West Coast. But I always say that she had my twins. She was just on the other side of the country. So where I'm over here, she's in Elks Grove, California, Tara. So yeah, it's crazy. But that little IVF thing, it's important to have that community. Mm-hmm. And it's sad when people don't succeed and you do, when you almost have like this survivor's guilt.
Totally.
That, like I made it, but you didn't make it out of this group. So that's the negative side of that. But you really have to try to just remain positive as much as possible, because there's nothing else you could do.
So what was the decision like for you guys around how many embryos to transfer? Or did you always know that you would do 2?
I didn't know that we were going to do 2. And I actually think that our doctor had planned on doing 1. But after he saw that, the other 10 didn't make it, I don't really even know if he thought those 2 were going to make it. So he was just like, let's just throw everything in the pot and see what happens. If there were 3, there's a piece of me that thinks that he would have put in all 3, because it just wasn't looking great.
Right.
So yeah, so I could have had triplets, and I suppose that Mother Nature decided to get her hand into the mix of things and only have those 2 embryos stay. So yeah, I don't know. I think I could have handled 3. I always say, listen, things get thrown at you that you could handle, or somebody thinks you could handle. It's not always you that thinks you could handle it.
Well, let's get into finding out that you were having twins.
Oh, my nerves. So with IVF, the benefit is that you go to the doctor so often. So they watch my blood levels rise. So you go for the first day and they check I think it's the HCG level. They check that and they say, okay, you're at 2,000 or whatever. And then you go back a week later to see if the embryos are still sticking. And instead of it going up in a natural progression, it was like quadrupling every single week. And you know what's funny, Bryn? I actually have the numbers like handy. And it's crazy. And I think it's because of Twiniversity. But like I have this calendar, or this pregnancy calendar, and I'm sure that a lot of pregnant ladies out there get, like these, like your pregnancy week by week. Mm-hmm. Well, I had mine on a calendar. So like the date of our conception, I knew was May 8th, which was also, by the way, my 5th wedding anniversary and Mother's Day. was the day that they put the little embryos in there. So I think that if I'm going to play the odds on that one, that was pretty good. So the first time that we tested my blood levels, it was like a 270, I think. And then the next time that I went back, it was like 2,900. And so they were like, there's a good chance that both of them took, but they didn't want to do an ultrasound. And then we just had an ultrasound scheduled. And we went in with my doctor, and my husband was standing next to me. And very confidently, the doctor was like, and there's one heartbeat, and there's the other. Like he didn't even think that it wasn't a possibility of twins just by the numbers of my blood work. And I looked at my husband, and the first thing my husband said was, we have to move.
I love it.
Living in a tiny New York City apartment, raising the thought of, having twins and double the stuff, and oh my goodness. But that was absolutely hysterical. And I can't even comprehend that this was happening. And yet he's 19 steps ahead of me and trying to plan where we're going to raise our family. Like, I just wanted to, raise them in utero. That was my number one concern. But being, the typical guy, he's like, what can I do? What could I control? This is what I could do. So that was his first thought. So yeah, they just found that second heartbeat, and I was in utter disbelief. I did not even expect to see that one heartbeat, because as much as you try to stay hopeful, there's the piece of you that's like, this is not going to happen. It's going to be like every other month for the past 5 years. I'm going to get my period tomorrow, and I don't know why. Like, this isn't a funny joke that anybody's playing, that you're telling me that I'm having a baby. It was like, it just toys with your mind, and it totally F's with your emotions. I don't know if I could say that on this podcast, but yeah, it really screws with you. And it took me a very long time to digest the fact that they were in there. And then once I saw their heartbeats, like, I didn't want to walk. I didn't want to move. I was afraid to shake them out of me, or that something would happen. And oh my gosh, I was so concerned that I was going to cause myself to miscarry these 2 embryos. So my whole pregnancy, I was living in this state of like fear, where a typical mom, I would hope that a typical mom would enjoy it, and her glowing skin, and her beautiful hair, and her, gorgeous nails, and her growing belly. Like, all of those things that I could see when I'm on this side of the fence with older children, I missed all of those. I did not enjoy any of it, because I was like, tomorrow's the day that I'm going to lose them. Tomorrow's the day. Like, it was so scary. And I think back to what a wasted emotion that was, because even if something was going to happen the next day, why wasn't I enjoying it that minute? So yeah, it was quite shocking. But the whole pregnancy was really, it was tough, and it's a big basis of why I founded Twiniversity, because I want to remind people. When I, at the time in 2004, when I was expecting, there wasn't a lot of resources for expecting twin parents, and the stuff that you found online was so medically heavy and necessary that it fed into all of my fears. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have, babies that are going to be born premature, and they're going to have heart defects because they're twins, and all of these things that were going to happen. So when I had the kids, and I started volunteering for the Twins Club, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I wanted there to be a resource online that people could find a home. That's the real stuff. And I'm not saying that, it's all like puppy dogs and kittens while you're pregnant, but I am saying that there's things to worry about, and there's things to not worry about. And there's things that you could control, and there's things that you can't. So that's what Twiniversity is there for, to remind expectant families that it is not all, negativity and, absolute darkness, that there is a silver lining to having twins, and you should celebrate it as much as possible.
I love that. And I'm sure so many people can relate to that. I think any, mom that goes through fertility treatments or has a high risk pregnancy of any kind, has had losses, there's just so much more anxiety. I mean, there's already hormones at play and anxiety around pregnancy. And when you've been through so much, it's hard to, like you said, see the joy in each day. I guess you probably would have hated to hear that at the time when you were struggling.
Absolutely. And when you meet singleton parents, I would meet all these moms that were having one baby who were just like having the best time ever. And I'm
Right.
like, what's wrong with those people? Like, don't they know that tomorrow it could be over? Like
Yeah.
it's fascinating. But a lot of my moms at Twiniversity, they come in feeling that way. So we teach Twiniversity classes. I teach them online and I teach them in person here in New York City. And we also have them in Chicago in person as well, taught by my right hand, Julie. And you come into that room and you feel like, I know that those men and women feel how I did, or a lot of them do. But when they leave, I can guarantee you that you will see the other side of the fence and that it is not all negativity. And we talk about it. We very honestly, we talk about things, everything from, the fear of losing them to hemorrhoids. I mean, we literally, there is nothing that's not on the table at a Twiniversity class. So I'm on a big soapbox to make expecting moms feel whole. I don't want anybody going through what I did. I mean, if I have to say that there's something that I was supposed to do with my life, I found it, and I found it because of that second heartbeat.
That's amazing. Well, I'm excited to hear what you were planning for their birth with twins.
Well, for all the years that I was going through infertility, I created a birth plan, right? So I was trying to stay positive, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to watch a lot of baby story on the Learning Channel, and this is what I want. And since I was a teenager, I always knew, it's interesting, Bryn, because since I know my husband so long, and I knew that he was always the one, that I always pictured what our family would be like. And I'm not like a super crunchy person, and I don't know if there's a better way to put that, but I'm not I'm not like a fully organic family, but I had this vision of what my birth would be. And I really wanted like a water birth surrounded by beautiful lavender candles with Enya playing in the background or whomever at the time. And I wanted this such like an organic experience. And I wanted to feel like everything that was in store for me, because I know that I could preach like women's lib all day long and be like, we should get paid the same and blah, blah, we're all equal. But we have one up that boys will never have, because we get to have these little babies inside of us and we get to grow tiny humans. And I wanted to feel every single thing that was given to me, because this is an opportunity that I know how special it was. So I had this birth plan that was like supernatural. And yeah, there went that idea. So when they heard that second heartbeat, I was like, up, all off the table. That's it. F you, Enya, I'm not doing this. I don't want no candles. Throw me in, a medical facility with 98 doctors and make sure that everybody's going to be born alive and try to keep me alive as much as possible. It's like it just totally took the opposite of anything that I had planned for years and years and years. I threw it all out the window. I was like, nope. Now that I'm having twins, I'm so afraid that they're going to die, that I'm going to die. I don't want this water birth. Like, that was the end of that. So it's so sad to me that I thought that I couldn't have any of that because of twins. Where now, being, a twin parenting professional, I know there's a lot of elements that you could bring in to your delivery, even if you wanted kind of this organic experience and then took a flip like I did. Like Enya could have still been playing. There could have still been maybe not vanilla scented candles, but I could have had some essential oils. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that I could have had that I did not think I could, because it was an all or nothing situation. I was like, this is my birth plan. I can't have it, so I'm going to do this. And I regret that I did that. And so I teach a lot of our families that, you could have your cake and eat it too. You might not be able to have everything, but you should have a say in your birth. And this is a story that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. My dying days, I will remember that day clearly, and moments of it that I have a more vivid memory than any other memory, more than my wedding, more than, the first time they took a step. My memories of my birthday are clearer than really anything that I have in my mind. And I don't know also, Bryn, if it's like, I'm an unusual situation because I speak about my birth so much because of Twiniversity. So I'm not sure if I feel this way because I talk about it every single month, or if people in general do. But
No,
regardless,
I think it's pretty universal. Like anyone who hears
good.
what I do immediately spews out their birth story in great detail. So no matter what age they are. So yeah, I think it's something that definitely sticks with you.
It's one of those things. So yeah, so that was what my plan was, and it just took a very different turn. So, and I did not have a very calm pregnancy. I had a lot of bumps in the road, and a I just had so much discomfort, and I had so much pain. And I had weight loss surgery. So one of the things that I thought the reason why I wasn't getting pregnant is I thought I wasn't getting pregnant because I was carrying extra weight. So I ended up having weight loss surgery in the 5 years that I wasn't conceiving. I ended up having weight loss surgery and losing 130 pounds, which is a significant amount of weight. And truthfully, in hindsight, with or without it, I could not have imagined being pregnant with all that extra weight on me, but I did it specifically because I wanted to get pregnant. So I went and took this big jump and had this weight loss surgery. And during the pregnancy, any pain that I felt, because at the time weight loss surgery, I had the lap band, so laparoscopic banding. So laparoscopic banding 12 years ago was still fairly new. So a lot of pains that I felt during pregnancy, doctors were dismissing because they were blaming it on the laparoscopic band. Mm-hmm. They were like, oh, you have a pain there? That's what that was. It must be the band. And so I'm going to my bariatric surgeon and I'm like, listen, my OB is telling me that the pain that I'm feeling is because of this. And my surgeon's telling me, there's no way. There's no way. Your uterus is here. Your stomach is here. There's no way that this could be happening. But it was still the Wild West at the time. So everybody was blaming me, and I was playing ping pong back and forth from these doctors for weeks and weeks and weeks until I gave up, and I was just like, take all this fluid out of this band. Let's just pretend I don't have it, and we'll move forward as if this is a typical pregnancy. But it was crazy. It was super duper nuts.
Did it help to do that at all?
It didn't. It didn't at all, because we found out that the pain that I was feeling was not bariatric related. I actually had HELLPS syndrome. So I was getting all of these. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But of course, I'm the needle in the haystack, right? So anything that could have possibly happened, I got to experience a lot of that. And in that regard, I feel fortunate because I took all that learning that I had and all of the pains and the round ligament pain and all these other things, and I talk about them now. And I always call it this side of the fence, but on this side, I speak to other twin parents and I'm like, oh, you had that too? Oh, you had that too? And I find out that it's not as uncommon as our twin mamas think.
So pregnancy was rough. Did you make a plan to induce, or did you talk about, how long you were going to go, anything like that?
Well, the doctors told me that I was going to deliver at 38 weeks and we were going to have a planned C-section. But my very, very first OB appointment, I went to NYU here. His name was Dr. Saltzman. I like to tell everybody because I think nobody should ever go to this man. But I went in there at my 9-week appointment or whatever. The ultrasound was stupidly painful. And he was a good reason of why I was so negative, because he's like, you got to watch out for this, and you got to watch out for this, and because you're having twins, it's this, and because you're overweight, it's this. And I left there and I was hysterical crying. And so I switched doctors, which a lot of people don't do. And I strongly,
good.
Yeah, I strongly recommend that you have just the nerve to do that. And even if it's a little mom and pop shop that's in town, if they're not jiving with what you want your birth story to be, you just got to cut your losses and find somebody else, because that man did not deserve to be in my life. And I am very happy that, I definitely have a little bit more balls than the average bear. I don't know if it's the New Yorker in me, but I know that during pregnancy, I lost them because I was just living in fear. And my husband was like, we're never going back to that man. You're never going to see him. You're never going to see him. You're not going to the practice. So we went to this new practice and I said, you know what? I really want somebody that has a vagina to deliver these kids. I've just made an executive decision. You have to, if you're going to be, ultrasounding my hoo-ha, it's time that you know exactly what this is like instead of just what you see on paper. So we found this practice that had 3 women. I saw one doctor fairly religiously. She was Dr. Amaru at Sinai in the city, and she was extraordinary. And she's like, okay, we're going to make a plan on 38, when you make it to 38 weeks, we are going to, we'll have a scheduled C-section, and this is why we'll do this. And so I was very comfortable with that. However, the twins, yeah, they had a much different plan of what was going to happen. So it's funny that Dr. Amaro was like, here's the plan. And the twins were like, yeah, we don't feel that. We're going to start going crazy at about 27 weeks. So I started going into labor at 27 weeks, and I went to the doctor. And this is something like that I really want to encourage your families to do, that I was I knew something was wrong. But if I grabbed a book or went online and were looking at the signs of preterm labor, I experienced none of them. But there was an alarm that was going off inside of me that was saying something's up, something's up, something's up. And I was ignoring it because I looked on paper and I was like, nope, no discharge, no bleeding, no tightness, no cramping, like boom, like everything that would be like, quote unquote classic signs I wasn't experiencing. But my husband's like, Nat, we're going to the doctor. Like, we're just going up. I'm making the call. And your spouse should always have your obstetrician's phone number. And I can't believe how many don't. But it's his babies as much as they're my babies. They're living inside of me. But this wasn't something that was like my idea. Like, we're in this together. So he made the call, and once again, he made the executive decision. And he's like, we're going to go to the doctor. And I went up to the doctor, and they put the little fetal monitors on me. And sure as shit, man, I was freaking in labor at 27 weeks. So we stayed there for a while. They gave me the shots for the baby's lungs. We were there maybe 2 nights. And I was like, I was right. All that fear that I was living in, it's coming true. It's all happening. This is what's going on. And the doctor's like, nope, you're good. We were able to stop your contractions, go home and take it easy. And I did. I went home, I took it easy. And now, remember how I was telling you, like, I'm a little crunchy? Mm-hmm. I decided that instead of just doing what the doctors tell me, I live in Chinatown. I'm going to go do a little Eastern medicine. And I went to a kinesiologist, and I'm like, hey, buddy, like, what could you tell me? And he's like, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. You have to find licensed prenatal specialists, and there are a lot. You could go for acupuncture. You could go for massage. You could go for acupressure. You just have to go to somebody that's actually licensed to deal with a prenatal body. But there is, like, truthfully, Bryn, there is a giant piece of me that credits that 27 to 34 weeks on those guys.
Interesting.
Now, maybe it's psychosomatic, because it certainly could be, and there's not enough medical proof that says that that's how it was, but I felt more comfortable because I was seeing somebody outside of the norm, in addition, of course, to my regular medical doctors. So to me, it gave me, like, I was covering all my bases. Like, whatever would happen, I knew it had nothing to do with a lack of not trying. I knew that, like, I've done everything that I possibly can. So I went to a chiropractor in Marine Park, Brooklyn, and which was like an hour drive from me in Manhattan. But this was the dude that has been just like helping me since I'm 16 with other medical things that were never quite resolved. And I made it to my 34th week on the day. A week before that, I really started getting some significant signs of preeclampsia, and the HELP syndrome was just showing itself in horrendous form. And I wasn't in pain. I was in excruciating pain. That I could remember sitting there in a chair at 4:00 in the morning, truthfully thinking, and this, by the way, and this gets to the part of why I don't tell my birth story, because I don't want people thinking that this is typical. But if somebody's listening and they were having signs of preeclampsia and this HELP syndrome, like, I could remember sitting there and the pain being so great. And I said to myself, if I just cut off my leg right now with this knife, that pain would distract me from what I'm feeling. And that, you know how scary that is, like as like an adult now to think about, like that was a genuine thought I had.
Whoa.
I was genuinely like, I'm going to remove a limb by myself in my dining room with this kitchen knife because that pain has to be better than what I'm going through. And like I get a lump in my throat and I get chills thinking about it because I swear to God, I was really that bad. It was that bad. And I also didn't want to tell people it was that bad because I knew that my job was to keep them in. And that's my job. My job is to keep those babies in, keep your legs shut, keep your mouth shut, keep moving forward because you've come this far. We're not quitting now. And it's just pain. But I didn't realize that pain was my body going to total shit. My body was breaking down, and it was breaking down fast, and it was furious. So my husband just had enough. He's like, why are you up? Or why are you doing this? Because I didn't want to wake him up. And at the time, he had a job that he worked a ridiculous amount of hours. And I was like, I don't want to burden him. Like, I'm just having babies. Everybody has babies. This is probably just what every mother feels like. And, you know, why am I making such a big deal out of it? And like, I would then talk myself out of this, saying that, oh, it's just me. But then my husband's like, nope, we're going. And I remember like the day that we went, classic New York, we took a taxi up to the hospital and somebody stole our taxi. Like, I don't know if you've ever hailed a taxi, but in Manhattan, you raise your arm and a taxi comes to you and then you get in. But depending on what street corner you stand on, somebody could get that taxi before you. So I remember waiting for a taxi and I was on like the northwest corner of this block and somebody went on the southwest corner while the cars were going north and they stole our taxi. I have never, still to this day, I have never seen my husband more enraged. And how he did not physically grab that guy and throw him to the ground to put us in the taxi. I remember he looked at them and he growled. And I don't know what was going on there, but I know like, good, kill that guy. Like that guy, like it's time. Like it's got to happen. So we got in the taxi, we went up. I didn't even stay in labor and delivery long. They actually were like, we're going to admit you. Like, we're not even going to mess around. Like, now you're a regular here because I was having so many other problems. They're like, just go up. So I went up. They put me in like I guess a prepartum floor where moms were on bed rest. I was still able to walk around and I was explaining to the doctors this pain, but they're like, you know, your blood pressure's high, but everything else looks good. So once I was admitted and the nurses saw that I was going, 48 hours without resting for 5 minutes, the doctors were like, you can't do this. Like your body is starting to shut down. And I remember they kept telling me the babies are blissfully unaware. So my babies were fine. Their heartbeats were good. They were strong. They were doing really, really well. But I was going to hell in a handbasket. My body couldn't take it. They were killing me. The babies were slowly taking a toll on me I couldn't walk. I would be like paralyzed where I stood because of all the pain that I was in from this round ligament, which is just something that's fairly average. But I guess with twins, we see it a little bit more. My feet were killing me because my legs were so swollen that from my knee down, it was just a stump, and it was a solid stump, and it was painful. And the doctors were like, that's it, we're done. And so they did a sonogram, and they found out everybody was head down, and they're like, you know what? We're going old school. And I was like, sounds good. No C-section for me. And they're like, you know what? It doesn't make sense to have a C-section because they're ready to rumble. So I was like, okay. So it's funny, Bryn, because I had never once thought that I was going to have a vaginal delivery. It never even crossed my mind.
Really? That must have been quite the, I don't know, mindset change.
Spoiler alert. I was shocked. So they brought me down to labor and delivery, and I can remember it was midnight. And things were going so bad, so fast, that now they were going to induce me at midnight. And before they induced me, they're like, listen, we know that these babies are small, so we're going to have the neonatology team come in and speak to you. So they had this whole team of NICU people come in, and they were like, okay, here's what's going to happen. the babies are going to be born. If the babies aren't breathing, this is what's going to happen. And so now I'm in total discomfort and ridiculous pain. And now they're telling me that my babies might be born not breathing. And now I'm like, okay, how do I prepare for this? Like, what do I do? And I'm getting stressed. Honestly, this is stressing me out so much that I'm shaking right now because I never talk about this. It's just one of like, it's not a taboo thing. Like I certainly will. And clearly I wasn't like, Bryn, no way, Jose. But I really don't want anybody thinking that this was a typical story. And I don't want people thinking like, oh, my birth's going to be like that. And I should get ready to have the NICU team. And people like they will prepare you for what you need to prepare for. There's no need for somebody to go research, premature babies just because they're having twins. Let the hospital guide you if that's the route that you're going. Let them tell you, okay, here's what you need to know. Here's what you have to prepare for. So this whole team came in. They prepared me. They brought me down to labor and delivery, and they're like, okay, we're going to rupture your amniotic sac. They're going to break my water. So I was like, fine, whatever. I don't even care. Like at this point, like I know I'm going down to Chinatown. Like I know that this is not good. So they rupture my water, and right after they do that, my pain was spiking significantly. And they decided that like I couldn't do it. Like my blood pressure and my heart rate was out of control because of all the pain that I was in. So they actually gave me morphine. So now I'm on morphine and I'm in labor. And it was unbelievable. I could remember sitting there with I could see the room in my mind's eye as if I'm in the room. And I have all the monitors to my left that are showing me that I'm having contractions. But thank God for my epidural, I wasn't feeling them, but I was feeling everything else. I was feeling my whole body just, collapsing into itself. So I just felt everything just going crazy. And my husband, who was working at that job with ridiculous hours, came in and the doctors were like, listen, it's going to be a while. She's comfortable. There's a cot right there. Why don't you get some rest because it's going to be a long day? So he just laid down and the nurses would come in and the nurses would listen to my husband snore because he fell asleep. And he really fell asleep. Brent, let me tell you something. When there's somebody sleeping on an airplane and everybody's looking at him like, oh my God, I can't believe this person's sleeping like this. Like they're dead sleeping. My husband was dead sleeping. He was out cold. So the nurses would come in and now I'm all drugged up and hopped up on poppers. And they're like, oh my God, he's so tired. And the other funny thing, Brent, is that it was his birthday. So it's his birthday and now we're having these twins. And now, I'm a first time mom. They induced me. We expected this to go for hours in labor for, baby A to start making her journey out. So at 5:00 in the morning, okay, so 5 hours later, I feel somebody coming out of me. So the nurse comes in.
I've never heard it described that way.
Yeah, I felt it. I was like, I know something's going on. So I call the nurse and the nurse is like, Nat, that's impossible. You're a first time mom. This is going to be a long process. I'm like, listen, it's cute that you guys think that, but I am telling you right now that somebody is coming out. And so they look and she was crowning. It wasn't even oh yeah, you're dilated. Let's get this party started. She was literally if I sneezed, she was going to come out. So now the doctor comes in and the doctor's like, oh my God, I can't, this is not the way things happen. But clearly, Bryn, I don't know if you've gotten the trend of this story is that nothing has gone according to plan, right? So nothing has. So we see that she's coming out and wake my husband up. He then, throws on his scrubs. We're about to go into the OR and I tell my doctor, who, by the way, I had never met before, because she wasn't the doctor in the practice that I had been seeing for, the months and months previous. I had been seeing Dr. Amaro, like I said, but now there's this chick, Dr. Barbieri. Where'd she come from? Who the hell knows? Don't know, don't care. Don't care. I don't really care who's grabbing these kids out. Somebody's got to do this because somebody's got to do this. So she goes and she brings us into the OR. I tell her, I can't do this without my sister. And the doctor's like, you're only allowed one person. I'm like, clearly this is not a regular situation. She's like, fine, let's go. So she gave my sister scrubs. So now my sister and my husband and I are both in the operating room, which is typical for where they deliver twins, just because the amount of staff is so great. And you also don't know if one's going to come out old school and then baby B decides to come out new school, which that happens as well with twins. So we get into the OR. They tell me to push. Within 2 pushes, boom, baby A is out. The easiest thing that had been during this pregnancy was getting that child out of me. Now, I joke a lot because I say the benefit of preemies is that they're smaller, so they're easier to deliver. But somehow now, instead of my body losing, my body was making me win. And my body's like, okay, you know what? You suffered through enough shit. Here's what's going to happen. These babies are going to be like slip and slide. Boom, right out. She shot right out. They caught her off to the side for 3 points. She went. They're scrubbing her up. She starts crying. I'm like, oh my God, she's breathing like this. We're already winning. Like we're super winning right now. We've been losing this whole game, and now finally we're winning. So they see baby B is right there, ready to rumble. And they're like, no, you got to wait a second. You got to wait a second. Let's clear this up. Let's get this ready to start the next process. So they tell me to push. 2 more pushes. Boom. Baby B is out. Out, wailing his little lungs out, screaming, 3 points off to the side. I always joke because I feel like they just like toss the babies. Like it's so quick. It's like a basketball game. So he's off to the side over there. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so fantastic. Like all of that pain, it's going to end because, the preeclampsia and the HELLPs, that's all pregnancy induced. So like, I'm like, finally, like, thank you, God. Like this is now the best thing ever. And so they go to deliver the placenta, and they deliver my placenta. And now the game is not going so well anymore because I start significantly hemorrhaging. So now a part of the story that I didn't tell you was I have a blood clotting disorder. We found out during pregnancy. Perhaps that's the reason why I couldn't conceive on my own, because some people that have this blood clotting disorder, if they have an embryo, their body confuses it and thinks that it's a clot and passes it. So that may be the reason why. There's multiple reasons of why I may not have been able to get pregnant on my own. But now I know, now that we know that we had it, I was on blood thinners through my whole pregnancy.
What's the disorder called? I know people are going to ask.
I have Leiden factor. So it's called Leiden factor 5. It's the factor 5 of the clotting chain that just goes crazy. So I clot too fast.
Okay. We've had someone on with MTHFR, which is similar with the clotting.
They're all different factors. They're all like different levels of the chain. So my chain is like the 5th piece.
Gotcha.
So we have it. We now we know that we have it. We've even tested my kids to see if they have it. But like apparently a lot of us have it in my family because it's a genetic blood clotting disorder. So my dad, we found out he's the one who gave it to us. Mm-hmm. In addition to my very tall height, he gave me this blood clotting disorder.
So were you doing the daily shots, or was it just a pill for the blood shots?
Nope, we were doing daily shots of Lovenox, which was the yellow vial at the time. I put it in my belly, didn't even blink because after the experience with the IVF and all those injections, who gives a shit about a tiny little freaking blood thinner? Like it didn't even matter. But because this preeclampsia hit so hard, they couldn't reverse the thinners. So now I delivered.
You're supposed to wait like 48 hours or something.
Yeah. Which that's great that was the plan, right? But we had no idea what the plan was going to be. So now I'm hemorrhaging because of these blood thinners. And I look down at the doctor and there's blood everywhere, just everywhere. And I looked to her, and remember, I had no idea who this woman was. And I said, should I be worried? And she looked at me and she's like, I'll tell you when to worry. I said, okay. And there was a piece of me that I'm not going to say it certainly wasn't an outer body experience, but I stopped worrying because I realized there was absolutely nothing that I could do. Nothing. There was nothing. I couldn't squeeze a muscle. There was nothing that I could do. And I'm getting choked up thinking about it because I remember like I didn't give up, but I gave in. And I'm like, if I die right here, I heard my kids cry. And that's all that I wanted. And this is why I don't talk about it, Bryn. Yeah. So I remember that like I heard them, and that was it. That's all I wanted in my whole life, was just to hear that. And I looked at my husband. My husband was white as a ghost. And this was the man that was growling a few days ago. And I knew that like this was not a good situation. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And then the doctor's telling me, listen, this is going to hurt, but I'm going to have to manually contract your uterus. So I have to go inside of you. And I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care what you do. Like, do whatever. Like, just give me 5 minutes to listen to them. Like, I didn't even care if I lived past 5 minutes. I just wanted like whatever it was, I just wanted to hear them. So I'm listening to them, and they call for blood. And I remember like all of this happening, and like, but honestly, there was dozens of people in that room, but I didn't even see them. And I just listened to these little monkeys that were off to the side. And then they gave them to my husband because now the babies were okay. Because remember, they were blissfully unaware. They were having an okay time. They were just born prematurely. They were fine. Everything was on my side. But he got the babies, and I remember they let me hold one. And then I didn't hold both of them, but I remember I looked at them, and my thought was my baby A. I was like, whose kid is this? Like, it was so funny because she's a total ginger. I mean, and I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of me, Bryn, but I'm an Italian girl, right? I got dark hair, dark eyes, olive skin. That's the way that we roll. And I have this little porcelain baby in my arms with this bright red hair. And I'm like, I can't believe, like, and then I'm thinking also there was a piece of me that was like, if my IVF doctor was like, Dr. McGee, I think I would have had second thoughts about what that whole process was. So, but I'm looking at, and that's how different she looked. But my husband, like all his cousins, they all have red hair. So it's not that far. Like it's in deep in our genetics. And I looked at that little monkey, and then I saw my boy, and they were like, okay, we're going to have to, we have to take them up to the NICU. And we made a family decision that my sister would stay with me. Thank God she was there. And my husband would go with the babies. And any place that the babies went, he went with them. And I'm like, I'm going to be fine. And even if I'm not, there's nothing that you could do to stand here. Like, though, that's what you have to do. Like, you're on now. And if you didn't know what your job was during this pregnancy, your job was to get that sleep before. And I joke about him sleeping, but thank God that man was on. He was on. He went with the babies. He has never done more in his life than he did that day. Because think about the stress that he must have felt. Like, I think about it now, like him seeing me there and knowing that I may not live. And then having these babies who it's like, that's your responsibility now. And despite the fact that you love her more than the son, you don't have a choice. You have to go to those two little babies. So we split up. They ended up getting the bleeding under control by her literally contracting my uterus. But I had 1 billion episiotomy stitches. And they brought me up to recovery. And I mean, it's like, the story just keeps going. And I ended up spending a very long time in recovery, and I couldn't see the kids because I had to get stabilized, and I was not getting stable. And they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, you know what? And here's where the crazy thing again, the dude that I had been seeing during my pregnancy in Marine Park, I called him. I'm like, listen, I just had a super bad delivery. I lost a significant amount of blood. Is there anything that I could do to gain momentum here? Because I could take iron all day, but my body's only going to regenerate fast enough. Is there anything that I could do? And he's like, there's some studies that show that, having a tablespoon of coconut oil helps. And there's an enzyme in pineapple. But he's even like, I don't know if any of this is going to work, but you got nothing to lose. And anything that anybody told me, from, a nutritionist to the nurse that just showed up to the lady that brought me in my lunch tray, I asked everybody, what can I do? Is there something that your family does, or is there something that you do post-pregnancy to get people back on their feet? And anything that somebody told me, I did. And I recovered as quickly as possible. And actually, I think I did much better than they had anticipated. But I remember being in recovery, and my husband was bringing me pictures of the babies that were on a digital camera. And one thing that I didn't think about was, I didn't think about who was going to be there or the type of delivery that I was going to have. So people were showing up in joy, right? Because the babies are here and we're going to come see the babies. But there were people that got to hold and feed and change my babies before I really ever met them.
Yeah.
And that's not something that, like, I talk a lot about that in Twiniversity class, a lot, because you don't think about it. You don't say, okay, I'm going to make a birth plan, and the birth plan isn't just going to be about Enya. The birth plan is going to be, okay, here's what I want to eat after the babies are born. Here's who I want to be there the day that they deliver. So there's a lot more to a birth plan that people realize. And it's all in the book. Like there's in the back of what to do when you're having two, I put a birth plan, and like Bryn, truthfully, if you want to link to it or whatever, because singleton families could use it too. This is not like proprietary information. It's just things that I wish that I did. And then, of course we polled Twiniversity families and we're like, here's what they wish. But fast forward, I got to my room. They put me in a post on the postpartum floor. I had so much water coming out of every bit of my body, not just like peeing it, but it's coming out of my pores. I can remember taking my hand in a cup and like scraping the upside of my leg and having a handful of water.
Whoa.
Because the preeclampsia was making me retain all of that, and now my body had no place to put it. So it was coming out of my calves like sweat. It was just every ounce of me. I was drenched. Like I could wring out the shirt that I was wearing because now my body's kind of stabilizing again. And it's funny because while my body is trying to stabilize, I'm still like, my babies, and I want to see my babies. And they're like, you can't go down yet. Like you can't even stand yet. Like, what are you doing? Like, get a grip, Nat. Like, you got to put on your own oxygen mask first. And I refer to this a lot at Twiniversity. Like, you got to take care of yourself because what are you going to do? What are you going to go downstairs and faint in the NICU? Like, how helpful is that going to be to the nurses down there? So get yourself, like, you got to get yourself together, and you have to wait for them to say, okay, you could go down. But that doctor that I had never met, Dr. Barbieri, I remember her. She came in at like 5 o'clock in the morning on the day that I was finally put into a room. And it was peaceful. It was winter, and there was snow on the ground, and the hospital's across the street from Central Park. And it was just absolutely peaceful. And there were no lights on, and the light was just coming in from the winter, and it's like that dim winter light. And she sits on my bed, and she's like, we have to talk. And I'm like, what the fuck is she going to tell me? Like, what could you possibly tell me? And she's like, Nat, she's like, you can never do that again. She's like, that was your last delivery. She's like, you will not make it out of the room next time. And now I had planned. I mean, I could remember being, 9 years old and playing house, and where everybody had one baby, I had 6. I didn't want a baby. I wanted a herd. Mm-hmm. I wanted a traveling nursery school, and I wanted a pod of children. And now this woman is telling me, like, I already had a rough journey, but now that we know that I can have them, like, I was ready. Like, I don't even care. I'll bleed to death right there on the table. But if my body's going to do this, I would suffer through that 1,000 times over to hear that cry. And so she's like, Nat, you can't do it. You just can't. It's just not one baby or 2 babies. I'm telling you, in my professional opinion, with the thousands of births, I have never experienced anything like that. And you can't have any more kids. And at that time I was like, well, all right. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't argue with that. I know I almost died. So what was I going to do? So
yeah, it's like you scared the crap out of her too.
Yeah,
that's a lot
really
to see that in her eyes, I'm sure.
It was and for her to tell me, I mean, she knew she was telling me something that was changing everything.
Right.
And the severity that she told me, like, it wasn't as if my doctor were telling me, it's as if my family was telling me. And she's like, they need you, and you need to get yourself together. But that was that. And, it was that sentence too that I think I always knew Twiniversity lived in me. Because what do you do with all your life experience as a mom, right? You apply it to your next kid, and your next pregnancy is more joyful, and you're more relaxed. And, you not that you take things for granted, but you know that they're going to be okay. I wasn't getting that benefit. So instead of me just using that experience on my next kids, I'm going to use it on thousands of families. Instead of, I could have 2 or 3 more or whatever. We could have adopted, and there's a lot of things that we could have done. But I mean, I took that experience that I had and I apply it globally. And instead of, me having a better pregnancy the next time, we have, hundreds of thousands of parents around the world having a better pregnancy this time, because of the information that I could provide for them.
I love that. I'm getting like chills.
It's a big story, Brennan. Like, I don't, everybody sees me like on my Facebook lives and I'm joking and like, because it is fun and I want people to enjoy that piece of it. But there is a very serious side of Twiniversity. I mean, this didn't happen because, I wanted to start a business and I wanted to be like Oprah rich. This was never the plan. The plan was that I will be damned if somebody has that experience that I did, because the shit hit the fan with me and I'm still standing here joking about, slip and slide preemies. That you can too. We're going to get through this, and you're not getting through this by yourself. You're getting through this with us. And we have a mom mentorship program in Twiniversity that if you're expecting, you fill out this form and you're like, here's what's important to me. I want somebody that's close to me geographically. I want somebody, that's close to me in the type of family that we are, whether you're, a same-sex family or a conventional family. Like we could find you a parenting mentor that matches whatever guidelines you want to put in place. And it's a big pillar of Twiniversity. And it's something that we're super serious about because you need that support. And while I have my local twins club here in Manhattan, not everybody has that. And you do need that. You need that connection and support.
Definitely. We're linked to, I know I have your book linked in a few places on the website and the resources, but I want to get all these like specific links from you to share on your show notes page so people can find all those amazing resources. So we're almost out of time, but I do want to cover a little bit of postpartum and breastfeeding if you want to get into that. Sure.
Well, postpartum, I was the lucky winner of the severe postpartum depression lotto ticket as well. Studies show that with twins, we're already more likely to have postpartum depression. But when you have a traumatic delivery like I did, instead of your body getting to normalize, you crash land. And with that crash landing and the stress of, my own physical health and then having preemies in the NICU, and my babies did stay there for a while. My son was there for 14 days and my daughter was there for 31. So having the stress of just being a parent, right? Because that's not stressful enough. Now we have super medically fragile, tiny babies. And like everybody always asks, my daughter was 4 pounds, 6 ounces, and my son was 4 pounds on the dot. And, they were there. It was very bad. And that's, once again, I credit Mr. Diaz, man. Mr. Diaz took the bull by the horns and he was like, you're going through some shit and this isn't normal and you need to fix it. And I didn't realize I wasn't washing for days. I wasn't taking showers. I wasn't brushing my teeth. Like there was no self-care, zero, zip. I was angry with everybody. I was resentful, and more than resentful, I was so mad at myself because I had already failed my children. I had already failed them. They just became humans 10 seconds ago, but because my body failed, somewhere in my mind, that translated into me failing my children. And it translated into the fact that I didn't deserve to be a mother, because what kind of mother am I going to be? I already let them down. I already couldn't be there for them. And that was a long process. And thank God for my doctors and thank God for my husband. And he took extra time off of work when, he took his typical paternity leave. And then a few weeks later, he knew that things were not good in our home. And he took off additional time to be with me, which actually had a super negative impact on his career. But neither him or I are, level 10 career people. Not saying that our jobs aren't important, but our families are much more important. And he took one for the team there, and he got me back on my feet. And it was a process of both medication, and it wasn't even like formal therapy. It was like, you do have to talk about this, and you do have to tell somebody how you feel. And this isn't your burden to carry on your own. Like we're doing this as a family. Like it's not just you on an island by yourself trying to figure out how you're going to do this. But I know this sounds crazy, and La Leche is going to come at me with their pitchforks and torches. But I almost blame breastfeeding a little bit too, because since I had this guilt of not having, of not keeping them in, I was pumping so much, and I had gotten used to pumping because they were in the NICU. I had just gotten accustomed to pumping. So I was like, okay. since I couldn't keep them in, I could provide food for them. And I religiously was pumping like to a militant fashion every 3 hours, 24 hours a day. I was attached to that pump between 20 and 40 minutes. And I was overproducing milk. There is no way I could have fed 1,000 children. My boobs were like on like level 10, like they were doing it because they, I was asking for much more than my body even really needed to provide. And my body was doing it. So I was like, okay, if there's milk, I'm going to pump. If there's milk, I'm going to pump. And I would do this. So I would never sleep for more than an hour and a half at a clip. And that would be months, months and months. I wouldn't do this. But I thought this is what people do because every fucking thing, and I'm apologizing that I'm cursing so much, Brendan. I apologize to your community, but I get a little crazy because all the shit that I was reading online was telling me breast is best. You have to breastfeed. You have to do this. And I was reading all of these sites that were like, if you don't breastfeed, you're a failure. And that is not right. That is not right to do to somebody. And it's not, especially in my situation where I'm freaking hanging on by a thread. I'm reading all this shit that's telling me that I'm a bad mom if I don't breastfeed. Meanwhile, I'm not saying that I shouldn't have done it, but I am saying that I wish that somebody said, Nat, this is an option too. You could supplement and breastfeed, and it's not going to make you a horrible person. Or, Nat, you're having a really hard time with this. Maybe you need to be physically better before you introduce these kids to breast milk. Like, get your shit together. But that's not what I heard. Mm-hmm. I heard all the white noise of La Leche, and I can't tell you, by the way, Bryn, they come at me. They come at me all the time, but you know what? I don't give two shits because there has to be a balance. It's not an all or nothing situation. And no matter, there is not one pregnancy and there is not one delivery. And there's nothing more that proves this than this podcast. There is not a one size fits all situation.
Totally.
Everybody has a different story. Everybody has different needs. And I was not a bad mom if I didn't breastfeed, but I didn't know that. So I talk all the time. I am not anti-breastfeeding by any means. I am pro-mom first and foremost. Then we'll talk about everything else.
You need to have your sanity before you are worrying about anything else. Yeah, I think, and I hear that a lot with twin moms too. Like it's double the effort, and yeah. I'm glad you shared that part of your story.
It really is. It's something big, and people need to know ahead of time. If you could know that going into your expecting, you could plan for it and say, you know what, this may not be easy. And it's not easy. Breastfeeding is not easy. But you certainly don't need to pump every 3 hours, 24 hours a day if your kids are in the NICU. Mm-hmm. Your kids are in the NICU because something happened. Something happened. And you could always figure this out. So, so that was an interesting time. And the episiotomy healing of that was an interesting time. And then another thing that I think is really interesting is that, I'm not really worried that my mom is going to be listening to this, but, your sex life post babies is, I can't even think of a word of that. And I, as a writer, I am rarely speechless, but it is such a difference. Mm-hmm. And with all of those stitches, it was like starting from scratch in a very, very bad way.
Yeah, I always say the 6-week thing is just complete BS. Like, try 12 weeks.
Oh my God. And I'm not saying that you can't, be intimate with your partner. I'm just saying that you should not go into this thinking like everything is going to be great. And let's swing from the chandeliers. You can, but maybe just give your badge a tiny bit of a rest and just be a little bit more creative for a few more weeks and then, revisit this. But it's like starting from scratch, but it's very important to kind of get back on the saddle. And, a lot of my studies with Twinversity that we do find that, intimacy plays a huge role, of course, in every relationship, but where like women feel validated and loved by, they feel loved by, being validated and you're a good mom and I'm going to show that, I appreciate you and I'm going to, empty the dishwasher and I'm going to just do little things that matter to you. With men, intimacy is their love. And that's the way that they experience that you show them love. And it's not that you're a bad person if you can't be intimate, but It's just that acknowledgement is, they just feel love in a different way than we do. And I think it took me a long time to realize that. And it really is because of Twiniversity, because of all the studies we do and because of all the surveys that we take. But that's what kind of gets him back to being normal. Just like you have to go back to being normal. A lot of times it takes you getting back to being intimate. It doesn't even have to be physical. It could just be like literally snuggling or whatever it is. But it's important because the time that you're raising your children is a tiny, tiny window of time in comparison to the time that you're going to have a relationship with that person.
True.
And you have to make sure that you don't lose that connection, because I mean, I know that when my kids are in college, I don't want to be sitting on the couch by myself watching Walking Dead. Like, I know that I want, him to be there with me. And I also realize that the best gift that I could give my kids is showing them what a really good relationship looks like.
Yep.
And they could learn, Mandarin before they're 4, and they could take infant swimming classes. That's fantastic. But I know that I am an example of what a wife looks like. And I know my husband is an example of what a husband looks like. Or if you have, a 2-mom marriage or whatever, it doesn't matter. I know that I'm demonstrating to them, this is what it looks like to be a partner in a relationship. Whether it's the equal partnership or whatever, or give and take, or you balance. But I know that the love that I feel from my husband is, I can't possibly tell you how much I love that man. There's no way. I am madly, madly in love with my husband. And I love that. It doesn't happen every day, but sometimes he'll walk in and I'll get butterflies and I'll think like, holy shit, I'm so lucky. And I know I'm lucky, but whatever I have, everybody could have. They just have to keep that flame going. And it doesn't have to be just a physical flame. It has to be that emotional connection. And what do you need? Not everybody needs to swing from the chandelier. Some people need to go for a walk in the park and have an ice cream. Everybody needs something different. And there's no wrong thing to need, and there's no right thing to need. Like, everybody's, their need is their need specifically. But you got to figure out what each of you need in your relationship, and you have to accommodate each other. Because it's compromise, right? This is it. Like, I'm in with him I barely know my life without this man. And I don't ever want to know my life without this man. And I want my kids to know that this is what a solid marriage looks like. And this is what it doesn't even have to be a marriage. You don't even need a piece of paper to have a good relationship, so I shouldn't even say that. I think that that's bias. But I think that it's really important that people never forget their spouse. And even through all that trauma, he was the one that was holding me together.
Right.
And I say, like, it's my sister, and my sister did. I dedicated the book to my sister, because where my husband kind of had to do things because he's the father of the kids, right? And I had to do things because I'm the mom. And like, everybody's like, why didn't you dedicate the book to the twins? All I want to know is, what really did they do? Like, I want to know what they did. How many diapers did they change? Because I'm curious, because I didn't see them change one. But my sister was the one who, she was that lighthouse in every storm that I had. And when I couldn't speak to my husband because I was afraid that he would think that I'm a bad mom, I was able to speak to my sister. And I'm thankful that I have her, and I still do. She's actually was texting me 27,000 times while I'm talking to you, because I was on the news this morning.
What?
And she just saw the news segment. Yeah, Bryn, it's one of those things. Listen, I live a very fancy life, Bryn. I'm just telling you.
Kind of a big deal.
That's how we do it. But I'm honored that you thought to include me in your podcast. And I just always want to give a disclaimer that, that wasn't a typical pregnancy and it wasn't a typical delivery. But the thing that everybody should take away from it is that even though things could go bad, and they do get bad, it's how you let it affect you and what you choose to do with it. So instead of saying like, I'm never going to be a better mother and whatever, I opted to take meticulous notes during, my pregnancy and during my, first few years with the kids. But I would never in a billion years have ever predicted that I was going to start a business that would unify the entire world's multiple birth community. Never in a billion years would I have ever predicted that. I had a fantastic career, before my twins were born. I worked in African travel. I would be in Africa all the time. I was in third world countries helping families and at the same time staying on, in luxury safari tents. I mean, I had a wonderful, wonderful career. But when the doctor said there's that second heartbeat, it was a literal record scratch on my entire life. And I just changed the course. And I am unbelievably proud of what I've accomplished. And if I do nothing more with my life, I know that my kids are really good humans. They're great humans. And I don't say it enough. And I'm not the type of mom that's like, oh, my kids are perfect. I'm actually the type of mom that's like, if something happens, I'm the first person to say, what did he do? Like, that's the type of parent I am. But my kids are really good humans, and I'm very lucky. I say it more than you know, and there's nothing that's lost on me because I know that I could have died that day.
Yeah.
So every day post that, it's just been this gift to me, and I don't squander it, ever. And if there's an opportunity that I could help somebody, whether it's a twin mom or whether it's, a homeless guy in the street, I do as much as I possibly can. And I probably do more than I should because it definitely takes a toll on you emotionally. Mm-hmm. But I love that people could call me. Like I got a call the other day from a woman in Botswana. Wow. And she has no medical care. And I was like, I'm on it. And thanks to the network that we have and being in this industry, I know nonprofits that are able to get to her and help her with what she needs. And that's a huge honor to be able to do that. So I don't waste an opportunity. And the service that you're doing is just fantastic. And the families that you're reaching, I mean, I love that you're giving me the forum to reach more people. So Bryn, I humbly cannot thank you enough. Thank you very, very much.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. I'm so excited about this episode. There's so many good, I mean, your story is just amazing in itself, but so many good wisdom bombs. And I'm sure people are going to be excited to check out more if they haven't already. I mean, Twiniversity is started for twins, but there's so much extensive knowledge there. And if just your talk about marriage, I think is enough to be, people want to be like, I want to hear more from this woman, because that was a great reminder for me as well. So I really appreciate your time today and sharing your story.
Well, it is my pleasure. And there's a whole chapter on marriage, and the chapter is called Batman and Chocolate Milk. That's the title of the chapter. And I strongly encourage you guys to figure out why.
Yes.
So, and Bryn, if there's a parent out there that, maybe can't afford a book, but would like a book, they're more than welcome to just email us at community@twiniversity.com, and we'll try our very best to put it into the hands of anybody that needs it. But, a gentle reminder, it's available at libraries nationwide.
Right.
So you could it's everywhere. You could even get it on, eBay. I mean, I've seen my book for 67 cents. And while that breaks my heart a tiny bit, I really don't care, because I just want people having that information.
Well, while you're talking about that, will you share the best places for people to connect with you and with Twiniversity online?
Sure. Yeah. So our website is just twiniversity.com. And if you're curious, we couldn't call ourselves Twin University. This New York State won't allow me to do that, but I tried. I tried, guys. So it's just twiniversity.com. And then on every single social platform under the sun, we're always at Twiniversity. And then personally, if you want to see what's happening in my crazy world, I try to keep church and state separate. So if you want to see what's happening with my twins, or what's happening in my crazy day and why I'm giving television interviews at 8:30 on a Friday, that's over at Nat's Real World on Instagram. That's probably my favorite channel. But we're really, honestly, if you just Google Natalie Diaz twins, you'll find us. If you Google twin class, that's something. And we have not, like I told you, we have the classes online and we have classes in person. But if somebody needs a scholarship to our class, like I said, I really do mean it. Our goal is to get you the information. It would be nice to be compensated when we can, but that's only if somebody could genuinely afford it. If you can't afford it, we have scholarships monthly. I'm actually giving out 4 scholarships today to our most recent online class. I teach the classes personally 90% of the time. So you get to come and hang out online with me for 2 sessions of 2 hours each. But just once again, you just go to twiniversity.com for everything. And there's links there with my phone number. There's links there with my email. But I have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful team that could help you in a second. where it may take me an hour to get back to you. If you really needed something, instantaneously, you could put questions on our Facebook page. You could send us direct messages on Instagram. You could tweet us. You could even you could even link through us through Pinterest or whatever. But we have people everywhere that are at the ready to make sure that you get the support that you need.
Perfect. Well, we will link to all of those from the show notes page so people can find everything easily. I really appreciate your time again, Natalie. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
My pleasure, Bryn. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to hear from some moms about what baby wearing means to them and Solly Baby, today's sponsor.
My name is Teresa Collins from Escondido, California, and I was asked to describe baby wearing and what it meant to me in one word. And the word that I chose was safe. Baby wearing helped me and my babe feel safe when we were in the trenches together in those first precious weeks of his life while we were getting to know each other. I knew we were safe when he was in the wrap. I could feel his heart and his tiny breathing patterns. I got to know what he felt like, what he smelled like, and baby wearing empowered me to be his mom when I couldn't, when I needed a break. And baby wearing has bonded us in a way that I didn't even know was needed.
Accomplishment. I feel that postpartum times can really leave a mom, especially a first-time mom, feeling really overwhelmed and bogged down. Your lifestyle changes so quickly and so drastically that simple tasks like switching the laundry or doing the dishes can be really daunting and become really overwhelming. So to me, baby wearing gave me a sense of accomplishment and still does. Since I'm on my second, I'm able to also kind of maintain that playful relationship with my oldest without losing that time with my tiniest one, and also making sure that he's happy. He doesn't want to be set down and laying all by himself, and I don't want to not get that time with him that I had with my first.
After years of struggling with infertility and failed treatments, I had to grieve the fact that I wouldn't physically grow a baby. When my husband and I decided to adopt, I feared about bonding. One of my first purchases was a Solly baby wrap, and as soon as we met our daughter upon birth, holding her tight to my body was the most supernatural feeling I had ever had. Our heartbeats synced and the bond was instant. Once we got home from the NICU, it became our regular bonding routine to wear her in my wrap, and still today, 6 months later, she will monkey her little legs around me in the same position and find calmness to my touch. I am forever grateful for the physical bond our wrap helped create.
Thank you so much again to Natalie for coming on and sharing her birth stories with us, and to Solly Baby for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget that you can use the code BIRTHHOUR at sollybaby.com to get $5 off your order. And if you want to get any of the information from today's episode, including connecting with Natalie and finding her book, just head over to thebirthhour.com and find the show notes page, and you'll find all of that information there. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.